The crowd roared inside the small-town MMA gym, expecting an easy show. A respected coach, known for his ruthless training style, had mocked the new janitor, a quiet black man sweeping floors in the corner. With a smirk, the coach challenged him to step into the cage, assuming it would be a quick humiliation. Phones came out, ready to capture what everyone thought would be a predictable beatdown. But the janitor calmly tied his worn-out sneakers, stepped forward, and stared down his opponent. Within seconds of the bell ringing, a single strike echoed through the room, and the coach hit the mat, unconscious. The story began in a modest MMA training center tucked behind an aging strip mall. The gym smelled of old sweat and ambition. Fighters came and went, most of them young men chasing dreams of fame. The coach, Brad Mason, was a local figure of authority, cocky, broad-shouldered, and quick to belittle anyone he considered beneath him. When the new janitor, Marcus Johnson, was hired to keep the gym clean, few noticed him. Marcus, in his early 40s, carried himself with quiet humility. His hands were calloused from years of labor, and he rarely made eye contact. He worked nights, mopping the floors long after the fighters had left, often enduring dismissive remarks or condescending jokes about his age and race. Brad, especially, made Marcus a frequent target of his arrogance. To him, Marcus was just another outsider, someone to mock to entertain his students. Rumors began to circulate among the gym's regulars that Marcus had once been an athlete, but no one knew for sure. He never spoke about his past, and his calm demeanor left the question unanswered. This air of mystery only made Brad's taunts more aggressive, as he relished the chance to prove his superiority. What none of them realized was that Marcus had quietly observed the fighters' routines for weeks. He swept the floors, wiped down the mats, but all the while, his eyes studied stances, footwork, and timing. Something about his presence, still watchful, hinted that there was more to him than the mop in his hand. It started as harmless ridicule. Brad would toss towels at Marcus's feet and tell him to earn his keep. Other fighters snickered, never questioning their coach's behavior. The more Marcus ignored the remarks, the bolder Brad became. One Friday evening, as the gym buzzed with fighters preparing for an amateur showcase, Brad's patience for Marcus's quiet presence snapped. He called Marcus out in front of everyone, jeering that a janitor's only real fight is with a mop. Laughter filled the gym. Marcus kept cleaning, his face unreadable. Brad's taunts escalated. He strutted across the mats, boasting about his undefeated streak in local competitions. He pointed at Marcus, challenging him to prove he could last even a few seconds in the cage. Phones came out, ready to record what many assumed would be an amusing but harmless humiliation. At first, Marcus declined. He shook his head and turned back to his work. But Brad wouldn't let up. He called Marcus a coward, sneered about his age, and mocked his silence. The crowd's laughter egged him on. Finally, Marcus put down the mop. His calm acceptance seemed to envelop the room in a gentle silence. No one had expected him to agree. His slow steps toward the cage carried a weight that made a few spectators exchange uneasy glances. Inside the cage, the contrast was stark. Brad stretched and bounced on his feet, brimming with confidence. Marcus stood still, his posture relaxed yet balanced, like someone who'd been in this position before. A few fighters whispered among themselves, sensing a tension they couldn't explain. When the bell rang, Brad lunged forward, throwing a heavy right hook, aiming to end the match with one brutal blow. Marcus sidestepped with fluid precision. The movement was so clean and instinctive that it startled the onlookers. Brad tried again, launching a flurry of strikes. But Marcus's composure never broke. He moved with a quiet sharpness, his eyes locked on Brad's shoulders, reading each telegraphed punch before it landed. The laughter that had filled the gym began to fade, giving way to a tense, expectant silence. In that moment, it became clear Marcus wasn't just some janitor. He carried the presence of someone who had seen fights far rougher than the ones inside this gym. The crowd held its breath as the fight unfolded. Brad's aggression grew frantic, each failed punch feeding his frustration. Sweat dripped down his temples while Marcus remained steady, his breathing controlled, his stance unshaken. Brad launched one final, reckless charge, a wild attempt to prove his dominance. But Marcus had been waiting for it. With a precise pivot of his hips and a perfectly timed left cross, Marcus's fist connected cleanly with Brad's jaw. The sound, a sharp, echoing thud, cut through the gym like a drum beat. Brad's head snapped back, his feet left the mat, and his body crumpled in an ungraceful heap. For a moment, time seemed to pause. The spectators stared in disbelief, phones trembling in their hands as they captured the aftermath. A coach, a man who had mocked and belittled another human being for weeks, lay unconscious at the feet of the very man he had ridiculed. Gasps spread across the room. A few fighters rushed forward, not to help Brad, but to make sure Marcus was okay. They recognized the restraint he had shown. One punch, clean and controlled, with no need for further violence. Marcus stepped back, his expression unreadable. He didn't raise his fists in victory. He didn't taunt or gloat. He waited quietly as medics rushed to revive Brad. The room stayed silent except for the distant hum of the fluorescent lights above the cage. In that stillness, something shifted in everyone present. The narrative they had believed, that a janitor was weaker, lesser, had shattered in an instant. News of the incident spread through the town within hours. The video went viral, not just for the dramatic knockout, but for the story behind it. A humble janitor standing his ground against arrogance and prejudice. In the days that followed, the gym's atmosphere underwent a change. Fighters who had once laughed at Marcus now greeted him with respect. Brad, recovering from his injury and bruised pride, faced not just a physical defeat, but a moral reckoning. His silence in the weeks afterward spoke louder than any apology. Marcus returned to his work as if nothing extraordinary had happened. He continued mopping floors and wiping down equipment, offering no explanations about his past. But word quietly spread that he had once been a decorated amateur boxer who walked away from the sport after a personal tragedy. Parents began bringing their kids to the gym, not to train under Brad, but to meet the man who had shown that dignity could be more powerful than brute strength. They wanted their children to understand that resilience wasn't about arrogance, it was about discipline, humility, and the courage to stand up when it mattered. For many who watched the video, the moment became more than just a fight. It was a reminder that titles or trophies don't measure true strength. It lies in the quiet perseverance of those who are often overlooked or underestimated. As the clip continued to circulate online, a question appeared in countless comment sections. How many others like Marcus have been dismissed because of how they look or where they come from? In the end, Marcus's victory wasn't just over Brad, it was over the prejudice that had kept him in the shadows. His single punch had not only knocked down a man, it had struck a blow against the assumptions that so often define others unfairly.